My husband cheated on me, and my wealthy in-laws made fun of me, saying they would win in court if we got divorced. But I proved them wrong when I found important evidence that put them in jail. I, a 24-year-old woman, let's call me Sarah, tied the knot with David, a 25-year-old man, not his real name, about a year ago. We had been dating for 2 years after meeting through my cousin, who was pals with David from college. Our backgrounds were poles apart. My folks were real estate agents, and I had a pretty normal upbringing with a younger sister. We were neither super wealthy nor struggling, just somewhere in between. David, on the other hand, was born into wealth, with his dad Sean, a 50-year-old tycoon, spoiling him rotten. His mom, Naomi, 48, was a socialite who lived for parties and shopping, thanks to their wealth. They were like characters from a bad novel, rich, arrogant, and not very welcoming when I first met them. Looking back, I wonder why I didn't find their behavior strange, but I was too smitten with David to care about his parents. They insisted I move in with them after marriage, and I agreed without much thought, assuming David wanted it too. He was my first serious boyfriend, and compared to my previous flings, he seemed perfect. So, I didn't mind living with my in-laws, especially since they lived in a huge mansion, and I thought we'd have our own space despite the living arrangement. His parents had been quite friendly to me before we got married, which made me even more reluctant to question things. When I said yes to his proposal and agreed to their plan, my in-laws seemed overjoyed and footed the bill for the entire wedding, despite my parents offering to chip in. My family and I thought they genuinely liked me, and we discussed how kind they were being. Little did we know what was coming, especially with David, who had always seemed perfect to me. We ended the lease on our rented apartment a week before the wedding and moved in with his parents right after. The first few days were pleasant enough, but things started changing gradually for the worse. Sean and Naomi became colder towards me, speaking less civilly than before. They would ignore me when it suited them and make mean remarks about me and my family when they felt like it. David told me not to mind at first, saying that having a baby would improve things, but I wasn't ready for kids and wanted to wait. This led to arguments and fights between us, and he began to distance himself from me, spending less time together than before. And this was all within the first 3 months of our marriage, showing their true colors early on. Before we got married, his parents were quite polite to me, which made me less suspicious. When I agreed to marry him and go along with their plan, it was his parents who seemed ecstatic. They paid for the entire wedding, even though my parents offered to share the cost. My family and I thought they genuinely cared about me. We had no clue what was coming, especially regarding David, who I always thought was perfect. We moved in with his parents right after we ended our apartment lease a week before the wedding. The first days were fine, but things gradually turned sour. Sean and Naomi started treating me colder, speaking less kindly than before. They'd ignore me when they felt like it and make nasty remarks about me and my family. David initially told me not to worry, saying having a baby would fix everything, but I wasn't ready for that yet. This caused arguments, and he started distancing himself from me, spending less time together. All this happened within the first 3 months of our marriage, and their true colors began to show. I found a phone on his bed, but it wasn't his usual one. After searching the room, I found another phone in his laptop bag. I didn't recognize it and didn't know anyone named Jessica. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. Unable to unlock it, I decided to wait for David to return home. After he fell asleep, I used his face to unlock the phone and discovered explicit messages between him and Jessica, indicating an affair. They had made plans to meet, and the texts dated back almost 4 months, despite us being together for just over half a year. Most recent messages were confrontational, with Jessica demanding explanations and making ultimatums. I recorded and screenshot everything, sending it to my email. I cried myself to sleep, overwhelmed by the realization that David had been cheating on me for months. The next morning, I confronted him, expecting denial or apologies, but he admitted to it, claiming everyone in his family knew. He confessed that he didn't want to have a child right now, because his parents were pressuring him. According to him and my in-laws, my main role in the family was to provide them with a child, ensuring they had an heir for the company as soon as possible. He claimed that was why he married me so early, as these were considered my prime childbearing years. Coming from a less affluent background, it was expected that I fulfill this duty to them. He even had the nerve to say that his affair was due to the stress of my refusal to have a baby and the pressure from his parents. He insisted that Jessica was just a way for him to cope with stress, but assured me that I was the one he loved and that I shouldn't be upset. After spewing all this nonsense, he left for work without even waiting for a response, thinking his behavior was normal. I packed my things and left for my parents' house, where I finally confided in them about what was happening. They had no idea about my life with my in-laws because I had kept it from them, fearing it would cause unnecessary drama if they knew how I was being treated by my husband and his family. After discovering the affair, I realized there was no reason to hold back any longer, so I opened up to my parents. They were incredibly supportive and wasted no time connecting me with one of their friends, who happened to be a divorce attorney. I told David that I needed some time to think and would be staying with my parents for a while, and he bought it. Meanwhile, I worked with my lawyer to prepare the divorce papers, and within 3 days, he was served. He was caught off guard because I hadn't mentioned anything about divorce even after learning about the affair. On the day he was served, he came straight to my parents' house, hoping to persuade me to give our relationship another chance. In my mind, our relationship was already over, so his arguments fell flat. He left disappointed, realizing I wasn't going to stay with him despite his infidelity, which showed his true perception of me as a pushover who would always stay regardless. The next day, I received a call from my in-laws. Naomi warned me that I would pay for what I had done to her son, claiming he had been miserable since realizing. I made it clear that I wasn't returning. Naomi accused me of making her son cry and threatened to ensure I was completely ruined in court. Despite putting on a brave front, I knew taking on wealthy and influential people like them wasn't wise. After a few days of thought, I took a risk and reached out to Jessica. Their recent texts suggested they weren't on good terms, so I hoped she might help. After some digging, I discovered she worked at the same company as David, where he was the COO under his father, Sean, the CEO. I contacted Jessica through social media, and we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. She was a bit older than us, attractive and single, so it wasn't surprising David had chosen her. She apologized for the mess but explained that David had initiated the affair, promising her a big promotion and raise. For Jessica, it was mainly driven by greed and ambition that led her to overlook David's marital status and continue the affair. As for David, it was merely a way to relieve stress. She revealed that even after the affair ended about a month ago, she continued working because the promised promotion went to someone else, making her suspect she wasn't his only affair in the office. She tried to retaliate by texting him on his secret phone, which he typically kept hidden and turned off. On the day I found out about the affair, she confessed that she had been attempting to blackmail him into promoting her, or else she would expose the truth and end our marriage. However, her threats didn't faze him because they both knew he had too much influence to be intimidated by an ordinary employee. Speaking up would risk her future career, so despite knowing the truth, she felt compelled to remain silent out of fear of losing her job. My text to her had sparked some hope, leading her to agree to meet me so we could figure out our next steps. I shared my side of the story with her, and together we decided that her best course of action for now would be to report the affair to the police to ensure it was documented, and to reach out to other female employees in the office to see if they had similar experiences. After about 4 days, she informed me that she had spoken to most of the female employees she worked with, and many of them revealed that David had offered them promotions in exchange for agreeing to his terms. While most had declined, one woman, who had been promoted, confessed that she had affairs with both David and Sean. When she learned that Jessica was set to receive the promotion instead of her, she visited their house to confront them. Unfortunately, I was not home at the time as I was out with friends. According to her, during the confrontation, Naomi physically attacked her, with Sean's assistance, while David stood by and yelled at them to stop, but did nothing to intervene physically. Naomi's attack left her with severe injuries, covered in scratches and bruises from the vicious assault. Naomi screamed accusations at her, branding her as a home wrecker. Upon returning home, she called David and threatened to involve the police. David, in an attempt to appease her, promised her the promotion she deserved if she kept quiet about the affairs. Despite this agreement, Sean continued to verbally abuse her when no one else was around. She endured it, fearing the repercussions of standing up to them, much like Jessica. Furthermore, she lacked evidence of the attack, making it impossible to accuse Naomi without risking retaliation. Then, a memory resurfaced from when David and she were arguing about starting a family. In a moment of desperation, she had installed CCTV cameras throughout the house to document the mistreatment she endured as she contemplated divorce. However, she had forgotten about them amid the chaos. When she learned that the lack of proof prevented her from going to the police, she accessed the footage and was horrified to witness the attack unfold, with Naomi assaulting her while Sean assisted, and David stood by passively. Despite witnessing the brutality, my husband did nothing to physically intervene, which was beyond what I could handle. Even discussing it now fills me with discomfort. Once I found the footage, I forwarded it to the two women and urged them to report everything to the police, which they did. A few days ago, my husband and in-laws were arrested for their actions, and I couldn't have been happier. David's lawyer called me to inform me, as David wanted to speak to me. They were all detained until the trial, but I had no desire to visit him. When I expressed this to his lawyer, he reacted with hostility, hurling degrading insults at me. While it wasn't unexpected, it was still surprising given their childhood friendship. He accused me of manipulating David's co-workers for my own gain in the divorce settlement, making me just as culpable as David. I didn't respond and simply hung up, though now I can't help but see the truth in his words. I pushed Jessica and others into a situation that could harm their futures, all because I feared confronting my in-laws alone. I try to reassure myself that everything will turn out all right, but I'm unsure. If things go badly for Jessica and the others, it will be my fault, and I'll never forgive myself. On the other hand, I don't necessarily see their imprisonment as a negative outcome because they are deeply flawed individuals who should not have the freedom to potentially harm others. While I could confide in my friends and family, they would naturally support me, so I've turned to Reddit for impartial feedback. I admit to encouraging my husband's employees to report him, giving me more leverage in our divorce proceedings. The response to my Reddit post has been unexpectedly overwhelming, and I'm grateful for the support as I navigate through a messy divorce. Although the process is still in its early stages, I'm optimistic that things will improve gradually. The ongoing trial involving David, with several former employees testifying against him, has been eye-opening. Despite his situation, he still manages to frustrate me during online negotiations, where I refuse to meet him in person. He attempts to blame me for his mistakes, but I know I'm not responsible for his actions. It's a challenging time, but I'm doing my best to take things as they come. Update 2. It's official. The judge has sentenced David and his parents to 3 years in jail. David managed to evade a harsher punishment as the relationships were deemed consensual, although it was clear exploitation of his employees. Additionally, he's required to compensate the women who testified against him, which will undoubtedly hit his finances hard. I'm uncertain how this will affect my alimony settlement, but time will tell. Nonetheless, I'm relieved that he's facing consequences for his actions. He deserves this and more. Update 3. Hello, everyone. It's been a while, and I suppose some have been wondering about my whereabouts. Since my divorce was finalized about 6 weeks ago, things have been looking up. David and his parents had to liquidate their assets to compensate their victims, and I received the settlement amount I had requested. The alimony will be paid in installments over the next few years, although I doubt David will be able to pay it all considering their company's decline. Their stocks have been plummeting, and despite new leadership, bankruptcy seems imminent. While it's unfortunate for other employees, they'll find better opportunities elsewhere. I hope their company shuts down and they go bankrupt. Losing my alimony would be a small price to pay. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life, therapy, hitting the gym, and pursuing my goals, reclaiming the life I had before David disrupted it all.